أيها الموجوع صبرا إن بعد الصبر بشرى أيها الباكي بليل سوف يأتي النور فجرا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ما بعد. This is our fifth lesson from the 70 major sins by Imam al-Dhahabi in his book Kitab al-Kaba'ir. Last week we talked about the major sin of neglecting the prayers, and we mentioned many sayings and traditions from the Prophet ﷺ, as well as the Sahaba, in which they consider the people who neglect the prayer as disbelievers and those people outside the fold of Islam. We explained what does that mean. Does that mean that a person who neglects one prayer, is he outside of the fold of Islam, or a person who neglects 5 prayers, meaning the prayers for a complete day? What does it mean? And we mentioned that the preponderant opinion of the scholars with regards to the explanation of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that the difference between a kafir and a mushrik and a Muslim is that of salah, and whoever neglects salah, then he has disbelieved. We mentioned the preponderant opinion is that anyone who completely neglects the prayer, meaning he does not pray a single salah in his life, and this individual, he is outside the fold of Islam. And we mentioned what is the punishment with regards to such people. Now, in this particular lesson, we are going to talk about some of the major mistakes that people commit when they are praying their salah. A person can be praying for 40 years, but unfortunately on the Day of Judgment, he might appear before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if he did not pray a single salah. And that's because his ruku', his sajda, his qiyam were incomplete, or they were not in accordance to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, maybe he did a few things before the salah which would invalidate it, or he did certain things inside the salah which would invalidate his prayer. And so it only makes sense for us to just briefly mention and have a whole lesson just on this particular subject, because it is important. Otherwise, if we don't know some of the common mistakes that a person does in their salah, then his salah may not be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First off, the question we should ask ourselves, upon whom and when is the salah obligatory upon? Meaning, when does the salah become a recommended and an obligation upon someone? And so, according to, and this is not only for salah, you could say this is for zakah, this is for hajj, this is for fasting, and all the other major tenets of the religion. Any person who's an adult. Now, the second question is, who is considered an adult? An adult is someone who has reached the age of maturity. What's the age of maturity? It depends. It depends on time. It depends on the place. It also depends on the gender. Now, for women, typically speaking, they reach the age of majority. You could say both majority as well as maturity, bulugh. They reach the age of majority before the boys. So the girls, they tend to age faster than the boys. And so typically it could be anywhere from 9 years up until 12, 13 years, and a few go above that. Whereas for boys, it's typically around 13 to 15 years old. That's when they become baligh and all. Then they have become aqil, and they have become mukallaf. They have been designated by the Sharia as adults upon whom all of the orders of Allah are obligatory upon them, and they will be asked and questioned and be held accountable on the Day of Judgment. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, when a child, and this is a prescription that the Prophet ﷺ gave us. Yeah, and this is in order for our kids to get into the habit of praying the prayer. He says that when a child reaches the age of 7, command him to pray. And when he reaches the age of 10, then you discipline him over it, meaning you make him pray the salah. So at the age of 7, you command him, you tell him, okay, start praying. Okay, did you pray? You don't fully enforce it upon the child. This is just so that way over the next 3 years, he keeps on hearing the importance of salah. And if you don't want to wake him up for Fajr because he's in his deep sleep, then you make sure you command him to pray the Fajr after he wakes up. But when he becomes 10 years old, and this is before the age of majority, then the Prophet ﷺ say, you make sure you enforce that upon him. Make sure you enforce the prayer upon him. Why? Because by the time he reaches the age of majority, he's 14, he's 13, he's 15 years old, then he would have saved himself from a punishment both in this world and in the hereafter. What's the punishment of this world? We've already mentioned that in the previous lesson. And so now he has already become accustomed to what is the prayer, how important it is, and so on. And if people are like, well, how can you make a 7-year-old upon whom the salah is not already compulsory, how can you make him? Isn't this oppression? Well, what more of an oppression is there when people go ahead and leave their kids, their 3-year-olds, away from their parents, away from their mother, and they put them in daycare, in pre-K. Now there is even pre-K. I don't know what that is called. They put him in they are making him, they're already institutionalizing him. So that way he becomes a good boy, a good citizen, an obedient citizen. So that way when the corporations, the corporates, they tell him what to do, he will go ahead and say, yes, sir, no, sir. And over here, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, 7 years old, start making him pray. Get him in the habit. And then how can you discipline him? Do they not discipline our kids? Do they not? It's the law of the land. If you don't send your kids to school, if you don't give them an education, the parents get arrested. And if the parents have a valid reason, they'll take away your kids and put them in a foster home in order for them to get educated. What more of an oppression is there than that? And over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is protecting our children from the punishment in the hereafter, both in a punishment in this world as well as in the hereafter. Also, the Prophet ﷺ says in another hadith that by the age of 10, he said, you separate their beds. So if you have both sons and daughters, typically you would house them in the same room up until the age of 10. After the age of 10, you give them separate rooms so that way they can sleep in. And this is a precautionary measure because by that age, both boys and girls, they tend to now realize their sexuality and they are more aware of what it means with regards to the private parts and so on. And this is also to close the door of any potential fitna, and we have heard many such things happening everywhere in the world. With regards to some of the common mistakes in prayers, the first one we could mention is failing to say takbiratul ihram. Especially when a person is praying salah in jama'ah, he's praying in congregation, and especially when the imam says Allahu Akbar, he goes to ruku', a person will be, maybe he's driving on, what avenue is this, Prospect? He's driving on Prospect 25 miles per hour, but by the time he parks his car and he sees the Imam, Allahu Akbar, he's running at 100 miles per hour. Just so he can catch the first rak'ah. He throws his shoes over there, he doesn't even put them and he's running at 100 miles per hour just so he can catch, and then he says, Allahu Akbar, and he goes into ruku'. This is as if this person has not entered into salah. Because takbiratul ihram, which is the takbir that you say Allahu Akbar and you fold your hands, even if it is for a split second, and then you go into ruku'. This is important. So even, first of all, before this, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, when you're approaching the masjid or the prayer, you approach it with tranquility. So that way when you stand in prayer, your heart is not beating like that of a hummingbird. 1,000 beats per minute. You come, you pray, even if you miss the first rak'ah, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. You can make up that rak'ah that you missed. But it is important that when you do come, you say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. This is, the first one is takbiratul ihram, meaning you just entered into the prayer. The second takbir is when you are now going to ruku'. If you say Allahu Akbar, then this is actually you just going into ruku'. Meaning you didn't even enter into the salah, you just went into ruku'. And so you can imagine the person, he's praying, or at least he's showing that he's praying, but in reality he did not enter the salah. So this is the first common mistake that you can say some people, they do with regards to the salah in jama'ah, and they lost their reward, not only of the salah, but as well as the salah in jama'ah. Another common mistake that people tend to make with their salah is not performing the sajda and the ruku', the bowing and the prostration. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, a prayer is not valid if one's back is not upright after bowing and prostrating. What does that mean? That means a person's prayer is not going to be valid if he does not come back from the ruku' and he makes his back straight. And then when he's coming from sajda, he sits up straight, and then he goes. What typically happens is the person, he goes into the ruku', and then he says, Sami Allahu liman, and then somehow he does like this. He gets up, but his back is not straight. Meaning he doesn't say, Sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana lakal hamd, hamdan kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fi. And then he says, Allahu Akbar. So people, they would just barely pick up their heads and say, Sami Allahu liman hamida, and then while they are saying, Rabbana lakal hamd, they're already going into sajda. This salah is not valid. A person's prayer is not going to be accepted. Likewise, when a person, he comes up from sajda, he does not make his back straight. He's coming out from the first sajda, and barely he's sitting up, he goes back into the sajda again. And we see this, unfortunately, people, the Prophet ﷺ said that this is as if he only made one sajda, and we know sajda is one of the pillars of the prayer. Meaning a pillar, by definition, is that which if you remove it, whether on purpose or by mistake or by forgetfulness, there's no salah there. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he describes such people who do this as thieves. You know thieves? Not just ordinary thieves, but the worst of thieves. Who are the worst of thieves? The Prophet ﷺ, he said that the worst thieves among people are those who steal from their prayers. So the Sahaba, they asked, O Messenger of Allah, how can one steal from his prayer? How does a person steal from his prayers? So the Prophet ﷺ said that they are the ones who do not complete their ruku' or their sajda. They do not complete their ruku' or their sajda, meaning they take away from what is to be considered a proper ruku' and what is to be considered a proper sajda. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he taught us how to make sajda. And sajda is an act of worship in it by itself, as well as a major pillar of the prayer. And in sajda, a person, he is the most closest to Allah. So the Prophet ﷺ, he taught us how to make the sajda. He said, I was commanded to prostrate myself on the 7 bones. I was commanded to prostrate on 7 bones and forbidden to fold back hair and clothing. Meaning what? When a person, he's going to sajda, maybe he has a shawl that will come off of him. So he says, I was prohibited from trying to straighten up any clothing that may come, and I want to go ahead and somehow wrap it up. Or people's hair, when you're going to sajda, your hair might come all over your face, and you want to go ahead and pull it back. You can't do this when you're in prayer. So the Prophet ﷺ, he says that I was forbidden to fold back my hair and my clothing, meaning let your hair and your clothes fall with you when you're going to sajda. And what are the 7 bones? The 7 bones is the forehead, the nose, the 2 hands, and the two knees, and the feet. The feet. These are considered the 7 bones. Meaning what? These 7 bones must be on the ground when you are making sajda. Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah, he said, but he's not the only one to say this, but because this hadith is in Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari, he makes the sharh of it in his sharh Sahih Muslim. He says, if any one of those 7 bones is missing from touching the ground, the prayer is invalid. Imam An-Nawawi, he's from the Shafi'i school of thought. And anyone who is following the Shafi'i madhab should know that sometimes you will see people, they will go ahead and they will have their forehead on the ground, but they will pick up their nose. Meaning their nose will not be touching. Or you will find people who will have their nose and their forehead and their hands and their knees touching, but they're having their feet up in the air. Or they're picking it up. You pick up your feet from the ground, your salah is not valid. Meaning your sajda, as if you did not do your sajda because all the 7 bones are not touching the ground where it's supposed to be. And so if your sajda is not valid, then it is as if your whole salah is not valid as well. Once a man, he came to the masjid and to pray his salah. So Hudhayfah ibn al-Yaman, who was one of the closest companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and he was a trusted companion. Meaning the Prophet ﷺ gave him the list of all the hypocrites in Medina. That's how much he trusted him. He didn't give it to Abu Bakr, he didn't give it to Umar. Not because he didn't trust them, but Hudhayfah ibn al-Yaman, he had a quality that the other Sahaba didn't. Meaning he had a quality, like for example, Uthman radiallahu anhu, he was extremely shy individual. That doesn't mean the other Sahaba didn't have haya. It meant they had the haya, but Uthman was extreme in his modesty. So Hudhayfah ibn al-Yaman, he was extremely trustworthy, if we can say. So once he saw someone coming into the masjid and he prayed, but he did not make his ruku' or his sajda properly. So he said to him, you did not pray. If you die like this, you will die upon the religion other than the religion of Muhammad. And what a big statement to say. If you die while in this state, meaning you did not perform your sajda and your ruku' properly, then you would have died upon a religion other than the religion of Muhammad. Now, another thing is some of us, we sit on the chairs and we pray our prayers. And most of us, we could say we have a legitimate reason to pray on a chair. However, if a person, and this is important, if a person, he is able to walk and stand up, then the scholar said that he must make his takbiratul ihram while standing up, and then later on he can sit down in this prayer. Does that make sense? The people that can make takbiratul ihram while still sitting or lying down are those that can't even get up. So they're bedridden or they are in a wheelchair. And those people, they should not get up or try to get up. But those people who are able to go about, walk and so on, when they are at least doing takbiratul ihram, then they should do takbiratul ihram standing up, and then they can sit down. Some scholars said no, they can only sit down in those positions that they're unable to perform while standing up, such as, for example, if he's unable to go to sajda because of his knees, then his standing up and his bowing, his ruku' should be standing up if he's able to do ruku' while standing up. And then when it comes to the time of sajda, then he can sit down and do the sajda like that. Is that clear? Also, another major mistake that people do in their salah, which is a cause for tubtilu salah, is the cause of invalidating their salah, is moving excessively. You will see a person, Allahu Akbar. He starts to scratch his face. Then he scratches his hair. And then he looks at his time. And then he looks, okay, let me see if I have my phone with me. Oh, yes. Okay, let me see what time it is. Okay. This person, the whole day, his nose didn't need to be scratched. The whole day, his hair was just fine. The whole day, he didn't have to cough. But as the minute he comes in salah, what does shaitan? There's a specific shaitan for this. Yeah? Yeah. Khunzub or khunzab. This is the name of the shaitan. What does he do? He comes and he breathes in your nose. Oh, I have to scratch my nose. He breathes in your ear. I have to scratch my ears. He comes and he takes your mind. Oh, today you had an appointment in New York. You're khair, tomorrow I will go. And then tomorrow comes, he forgets. There's a saying that when the Sahaba, they wanted anything, they used to stand in prayer and ask Allah. And then they will, whether it's to find something, they will ask Allah, whether they need something. But nowadays, the same thing. When you want to find something, just say Allahu Akbar, start praying your salah, and then you will remember. Wallahi, I tested this. One of my family members, they lost their gold because they were moving from one house to another. Wallahi, I told them, I said, pray your salah. Wallahi, she prayed her salah, and she remembered where she put it. I told her to pray her salah, to ask Allah to help her to remind it. She prayed her salah. By the time she finished her salah, no need to ask Allah. She already remembered. This is the reality of our prayers, brothers. And that's why Aisha radiallahu anha said that the first thing to be removed from this ummah is the concentration in salah, up to the point where everyone who is praying, not a single person, he is thinking about Allah or he is remembering Allah. And so you will have people who are making excessive movements. According to the Shafi'i madhab, that if you move more than 3 times, your salah is invalid. Meaning, if you go like this, 1 time, 2, 3. If you do it more than 3, that's it. According to the Hanafis, they say if you look at a person and you think that he's not in salah, then he's not in salah. Meaning what? Some people, when they are in salah, they will use both their hands. And when someone uses both his hands to fix something or to do something, then you know this person, he's not in salah. At least the Shafi'is, they say one hand. Because if you do this, you know this person, he's still in salah. But according to the Hanafis, if you use both your hands, when I see someone like this, I know he's not in salah. So if you give the impression to someone, if they enter that, oh, this person, he's not praying, then that means you are not praying. So this tells us, brothers, that even if you have the urge to scratch your head, whatever, your nose, don't do it. After 5 seconds, the urge will go away. Because if you pay attention to the urge, it's going to come up somewhere else and so on. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He described the people who are successful. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Indeed, the believers are successful, those who pray their salah with concentration, with khushu', with honest. Now you're standing before Rabbul Alameen. Imagine if you're before a king, yeah, and you're looking here and there and you're scratching and you're picking your nose and you're doing all kinds of, you think you will do that? You have your little son next to you, yeah, and he's playing around and what are you going to do? Probably going to slap him on his head and say, listen, stand upright. What about before the King of Kings, Rabbul Alameen, the Lord of the universe? How should we be standing before Him? Another very, very major mistake is people, they try to race with the Imam. They try to race with the Imam. The Imam says, he's about to go to ruku, Allahu Akbar. The guy, he's already in ruku before the Imam says Allahu Akbar. And when he's saying, the guy, he's already standing. And when he says Allah, he's going to ruku, the guy, he's already in sajda. Yeah? Well, I have news for those brothers and those sisters. Whatever you do, however fast you move, you can never finish before the Imam. Yeah? You can never finish before the Imam. So, the Prophet ﷺ said the Imam is to be followed. When he goes to ruku', go to ruku'. When he goes to sajda, go to sajda. Don't go before him to ruku' and don't go before him to sajda. And it comes in Hadith Sahih al-Bukhari, the Prophet ﷺ, he warned us. He says, isn't he who raises his head before the Imam, isn't he who raises his head before the Imam afraid that Allah may transform his head into that of a donkey, or his face into that of a donkey? Meaning, this is a warning that if a person, maybe you say, I didn't know, Allah will forgive you for that. Now you know. And if you do it on purpose, despite knowing the warning from the Prophet ﷺ, it may be that Allah will disfigure your face. Another very common mistake, and the salah becomes invalidated because of this. All of these that I have mentioned is the invalidation of the salah. Like I've said, people spend 40 years praying and there's not a single salah may be accepted. Another major mistake is not covering the awrah. Not covering the awrah. Whether it's both for brothers or sisters. Yeah? But given that I am praying amongst the brothers, I see that brothers, they like to wear their tight pants and their short shirts, and it may be covering their navel, and it may be covering whatnot. But then when they go to ruku and sajda, London can be seen. No. Your awrah shows, that's it, your salah becomes invalidated. What's the awrah of a man? Between his navel and his knees. What's the awrah of a woman? Her complete body except the face and the hands. In salah. In salah, the minimum in salah is a person, he covers, for a man, he covers between his navel and his knees. This is the bare minimum. Meaning, if you are wearing shorts, and then when you're going to sajda, your shorts are going to come up. If it exposes your knees, your salah becomes invalidated. Or if your pants go down and people can see your awrah, your salah becomes invalidated. How many times do we have to remind the brothers, we're not interested in what you have to show. You need to cover your awrah. Wear something long. Be respectful, first of all, to Allah, to His house, then to the angels, then to your fellow musallin. And then be respectful to yourself. So if you see a person, kindly remind him and advise him that he needs to wear something more appropriate. Another common mistake is people look around in the prayer. Where is the place of the prayer? When you're standing up, you should be looking at your sajda place. When you're going into ruku', you should be looking at your sajda place. When you are sitting, when you are making sajda, you should be looking at your sajda place. When you are sitting in jalsa and sitting and reading the tahiyyah, then where should you be looking? Where? You should be looking at your finger. Yeah, when you say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, you should be looking at that. So throughout, and this is discipline, brothers. This is discipline. When you're driving, if you look at your phone and the police sees you, what happens? That's it. So when we see the police, sometimes I'm guilty of this. Khalas, we throw away the phone. And Allah, He is Ar-Raqib. He's ever watchful over us. Yeah? So you see people looking like this. And the Prophet ﷺ, he warned us about this. And more specifically is raising your head up to the skies and looking. You are praying and you look up like this. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says in hadith of Bukhari that people must refrain from raising their eyes towards the skies in prayer, or else their sight will be snatched away. Their sight will be snatched away. And also the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he forbade 3 things when it comes to the prayer. One of them is looking around in salah like a fox. Like a fox. And it's not only, so there are a few animals the Prophet ﷺ prohibited us from imitating them in our prayer. Yeah, count with me. Number 1 is a fox looking around, always. Another is like a chicken, like a hen. What does a hen do? It pecks. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he says, he describes the prayer of the hypocrites. And he described 2 main qualities of a hypocrite. Let's see, may Allah protect us from this. He sits watching the sun decline. Oh, okay. It's still it's 3:30. Khalas, I still have time. And then something emergency comes up and he gets busy, and next thing you know it's 4:15. What time is Maghrib? About 4:34. So then he starts to pray while the sun is setting in between the two horns of shaitan. And how does he pray? Like a chicken. These are the two qualities of the hypocrites when it comes to prayers. So the Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited us from pecking like the hen when it comes to the prayers, and from looking around in the prayer like a fox. Also, praying like a camel. Praying like a camel. The Prophet ﷺ, it is reported in hadith of An-Nasa'i and At-Tirmidhi and others, that إِذَا سَجَدَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلَا يَبْرُكْ كَمَا يَبْرُكُ الْبَعِيرُ. That when you are going to the sajda, then do not go as a camel goes. Meaning, when you are kneeling and you are going to the sajda, do not kneel the way a camel kneels. So who has seen a camel kneel? Yeah? How does a camel go first? Does he put his hands first or his knees first? A camel, how does he sit down? His front legs and then his back legs. Is this how a camel sit? So basically the Prophet ﷺ, he's saying to do the opposite of that. Meaning don't kneel the way a camel kneels. So how should a person go to sajda? A person should go to sajda with his hands first and then his knees. Yeah? No, a person, he goes to the sajda with his hands first and then his knees. Yeah. So if you look at the camel, his front goes first, yes? And then his back goes first. So that means we should go knees first and then our hands? Correct? Yeah, no. I know what I said. Yeah, I know what I said. Yeah. So this is what you guys are saying, that the camel, when he's kneeling, he kneels with his front first and then he's with his back legs, right? If you look closely to a camel, his hands are actually in the back. What is considered his back feet is actually his hands. And what is the front is actually considered his hands. Sorry, legs. Yeah. Okay? So he goes legs first and then his hands. How do we know this? Well, the best people to ask what is the anatomy of a camel are the Bedouins, because they are the ones who are the caretakers and the herders of camels. And also when you look at it, the back legs, how does it bend? It bends the way an arm bends. Yeah, next thing you know, no, don't look at YouTube video now. Look at it later. Yeah, and then if I'm wrong, I want you all to call me and say, Sheikh, you are completely wrong. You must do tawbah, and we are not going to come to your class anymore. Yeah, so the back of his legs are actually his arms, because the way they bend is like this. The way they bend is the way an arm bends. And his front legs, the way they bend is the way our feet bends. So that's why the Bedouins, they knew, and it was common amongst the Arabs, that the front are the legs and the back are the arms, from a human anatomical perspective. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِذَا سَجَدَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلَا يَبْرُكْ كَمَا يَبْرُكُ الْبَعِيرُ وَلْيَضَعْ يَدَيْهِ قَبْلَ رُكْبَتَيْهِ. I didn't complete the hadith. Yeah? وَلْيَضَعْ يَدَيْهِ قَبْلَ ركبتيه. And so this is a huge debate amongst the scholars according to the Hanafis, and according, I believe it may be the Malikis. According to the Hanafis, the Malikis, they say, no, you go feet first and then hands. Why? Because they thought, just like how you're all thinking, that the front, when they looked at the camel, oh, the camel go hands first and then feet, so then we should go feet first and then hands. But that is the observation that they made, not knowing that the camel's front is actually his legs and his back is actually his arms. And so we don't need to delve ourselves. And Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says, if you pray anyway, like this or like, because there's a legitimate differences of opinion amongst the scholars, both ways, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept your salah. So the point is not that you should go hands first or feet first. That's not the point of me bringing this up. If you are going feet first and you believe that to be correct, then you can do that. If you're going hands first and then feet, then that is also correct, inshallah. But if you have a knee problem, then it is wise for you to go hands first and then your knees, so you can support your knees that way. And both of them are correct, inshallah. Another type that the Prophet ﷺ prohibited us from praying is like that of a dog. Specifically when it comes to resting the forearms on the ground. So I see some people that when they are going to sajda, they put their hands like this. They put their hands like this. Can you pray like this? No, you should not pray like this, because if you look at a dog, how do they sit? They sit like this. So the Prophet ﷺ, you see how he's saying you are a human, you're better than a dog, you're better than animals, you're worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you pray like a human being. Pray like you see me praying. So don't rest your hands like this. So what should you do? Pick it up. Pick it up like this. But also brothers, I also see brothers, mashallah, doing like this too. And there's no place for me to make sajda. Give me some space too. Be a little bit generous. You say, brother, no, I cannot pray like a dog. But don't pray like, a person like this. I'm wondering, should I go inside his arm to go and pray? So, also squatting like a dog. Squatting like a dog. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, when you raise your head from sajda, then do not squat like a dog. What does that mean? Do not squat like a dog. It means when you're putting your buttocks, don't put it on the floor. Put it on your feet. When you're sitting, meaning when you're sitting, you sit on your feet. And then one of your feet should be standing upright like this. Okay? One of your feet should be standing upright. But the way a dog squats is, he will go ahead and spread his legs and then he will sit, meaning his buttocks is touching the ground. And so you see the Prophet ﷺ so far has prohibited us from looking in the prayer like a fox, from pecking like a hen, from squatting like a dog, from having our forearms on the ground like a dog, from kneeling like a camel. Okay? Like a camel. Also, what is another major mistake that people commit when they are in the prayer? It's not a major mistake. What else? Then why are you praying if you forgot Surah Fatiha? If you come in, what are you going to do? Just go to ruku'?
Maybe like holding the bathroom while you pray.
Okay, good. It's not a major mistake where your salah becomes invalidated. A person, for example, he has to use the bathroom. He said, Wallahi, it's just, let me pray my salah. So he's holding it, and mashallah, the Imam, he decides to recite Surah Al-Baqarah. Yeah. And the Imam, he decides to be very extra emotional tonight. Yeah. So, and this guy, he's like, man, I should have used the bathroom, made wudu, and prayed my salah, properly. What else? Yeah, yawning. It's not a major mistake, but yawning. If you are yawning in salah, the Prophet ﷺ says, suppress your yawn as much as you can. Don't go, and then no. Suppress your yawn as much as you can. Okay? What else? Huh? Yeah, it's not from the sunnah to close your eyes. What about food? Yeah? MashaAllah, the food, the biryani and the chapati is coming. All the nice smell. And we are cursing the poor Imam. Hurry up, when is he going to finish the prayer? Oh. Comes in hadith of Bukhari. Once Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he was in the masjid and the food came. The food came and also the iqamah. So he went and he ate. He said, Salah. He said, no, first food. Why? Let me go eat so that way I don't have to think. What do people say? Hurry up, let's pray Salah so we can eat quietly. No, Habibi. Hurry up and eat your food so you can pray quietly. You see how we have things mixed up? Huh? They say, خلاص نخلص من صلاة and then we will eat, at ease. No, go finish the food as fast as you can so you can pray with tranquility and peacefully. Okay? And lastly, I would like to finish off the importance of Jumu'ah prayer. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he was asked about an individual who prays his 5 times prayer and he fasts every day, but he does not attend the Jumu'ah prayer. What's his masir? What's his end? He said he will go to Jahannam. He prays 5 times and he fasts every day, but he does not attend the Jumu'ah prayer. What's his outcome? He says that if he dies while doing this, then he will enter into the hellfire. Also, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu and Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma narrated that they heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say from his mimbar that people should definitely stop neglecting the Jumu'ah prayer, or else Allah will most certainly seal their hearts and they will most certainly be from amongst the neglectful one, the ghafilin, those who are neglectful, unmindful about what is their purpose in this world and about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also in another narration, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, whoever neglects 3 Jumu'ahs out of negligence, meaning he doesn't even, it's time for Jumu'ah, I forgot, out of negligence, will have a seal placed upon his heart. His heart is going to be sealed. And some of the scholars, they interpreted this as a person, he is no longer a Muslim. A person who misses 3 Jumu'ah without a valid excuse, then khalas, he's outside the fold of Islam. He has to say his shahada again. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us be mindful in our salah, pray according to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, pray in a manner that is pleasing to him and that is acceptable. May Allah forgive us for all of our major and minor sins, whether it is in salah or outside of salah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from amongst the khashi'een. those that have concentration and devotion in their prayer and pray their prayer as if they are standing in front of their Lord, as if they are seeing Him, if not then as if Allah is seeing them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of our prayers, all of our du'as, all of our supplications in His purest form. Make it a means of our light, both in the grave as well as on the day of judgment. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
أيها المكسور قل لي هل يديم الله كسرا